For all of the technical analysts out there, I found a new trading pattern called the XJP pattern. So here you see it with Pinterest, which dropped around 25% right after earnings. And now we have NIO earnings coming up, right? And so in this video, I'm asking whether or not NIO could be trading actually also in an XJP pattern after earnings. So you might be asking, what is the XJP pattern? And I'm referring to Xi Jinping because this pattern is also shown up, for instance, in TAL. So yes, right, the Chinese education stocks which dropped rapidly. So you saw this pattern in some of these Chinese names first, right after the crackdowns happened. So obviously I'm using this to kind of make fun or sharpen the senses that not only things like Xi Jinping and the crackdowns in China can really sharply affect the stock prices. Also earnings are obviously a big challenge to some of these growth names recently, because also some of the US growth names really have been selling off up to 25% and such after earnings. And the interesting fact here is, for instance, that Fastly and also Pinterest in some ways were not even that bad in terms of the Wall Street estimations and then the actual EPS or the growth numbers. But usually, mostly it was an issue with the outlook that these stocks have been showing. And so now the question is obviously coming back to NIO earnings, where will the stock go and in what way could it be affected? So for one, NIO is priced as a growth stock, right? So lots of expectations are already priced into the stock. And we've seen that the deliveries are kind of in line with the guidance of the management. But now it really comes down a lot to whether or not the revenue guidance has been met and also whether or not the EPS, the earnings per share, are in line with the Wall Street consensus. But even if they are meeting it, we've seen with examples like Fastly that this isn't really yet enough in order that the stock is prevented from falling a lot. So I would say, looking at the NIO stock price, we could easily drop up to 27% again from these levels right now, because this is where it has shown the biggest support around $32 back then. And so minus 15 to minus 30% could happen really in the worst case as a growth stock like NIO and volatile like NIO is, and with all of the expectations priced into the stock. But on the other hand, we also need to be aware that NIO has been quite depressed in the stock price performance because of things like the China crackdown, because of things like the chip shortage and so on. And so, as mentioned always, like going into Q3, going into Q4, in automotive, these are the good quarters. So I would say that possibly investors have been much more on the conservative side so far. And in case that the numbers turn out not to be too bad, then it would actually strengthen the confidence in investors that they are going into the second half of this year, would be looking more towards a bullish performance of the stock as well. And so, although it is a reality that the Xi Jinping pattern could happen with NIO as it did with, for instance, Fastly and Pinterest, I do think it is less likely to happen. Although I have to say, my expectations for this quarterly earnings are not as high. I personally have quite low estimations on the revenues for NIO. Actually, I'm going to post my estimations there with the detailed numbers and so on in the Patreon network before the earnings. So have a look there if you're part of the membership there. But in general, it doesn't mean too much whether or not these numbers are a slight miss or slightly above that. As we've seen now several times, stocks can fall on good news, they can go up on bad news and so on. And for me, what is much more important is actually Q4 in particular this year, but over the long term even more so, that NIO is sticking true to their vision and the business model and the fundamentals of the business. And so far, from the delivery numbers and so on, they haven't changed, and I expect that also the numbers are going to show that on the fundamental side everything is quite in the trajectories that I see unfolding for NIO in, let's say, a 5-year period there. So generally looking relaxed into the Q2 earnings here and not over-interpreting of what could happen and what is going to happen in case we have a sharp drawdown. Look at Fastly as well. It also has recovered again. I will make sure to comment it for you guys with the actual numbers, of course, and as mentioned before, gonna post my detailed expectations with the actual numbers on my Patreon. So thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment what you are expecting from the quarterly numbers this time, and then see you in the next video.